regarding Bitcoin dominance, Bitcoin has regained dominance. But as we already said in the last live stream, Bitcoin would gain dominance again. Of course, no one expected such a sudden spike upwards. No one could have predicted that. We'll also talk in a moment about what actually happened this week and what challenges this brings for chart analysis. But just briefly back to Bitcoin dominance. It's clear that Bitcoin dominance has gone up because the altcoins were sold off much more heavily than Bitcoin. As a result, even in a bearish market, dominance jumps back up. The basic idea was that after being in this trend channel, we moved downwards in a three-part movement. At that point, we were at 57%. Now we've moved up in the A wave. There should be another correction in a B wave. Maybe that already happened here. I think Bitcoin dominance will drop a bit further. Then there would be a slight rise into a larger B wave, and after that, Bitcoin dominance should fall further. Of course, I hope all of this happens in a rising market, especially so that the altcoins can really surge again, and not in a falling market. What I want to show you now is, for example, the altcoin season. This is the annual index that I have set up here. And for me, it's not necessarily about whether it's altcoin season or Bitcoin season right now, but rather that in this view, we've already had two bull runs. Here in 2017, 2018, that means at the top for altcoins, we had an altcoin season where we went up to 100 points, a value that has never been reached again. So you could say in 2018 it was like that. The bull run ended with an altcoin top during the season. Then we had 2021 where up here we found our top where we reached 94 points and the bull run was then over. And if the bull run really were over now, I mean, I can't tell you for sure either. We can only gather various facts, look at them together, and form an idea of how likely it is that the bull run will continue or that it's actually over. But if that were the case, we would have had our top in December of last year at just 54%. And this year, the highest value was, let me just check if I can pull that up, well, roughly just over 40 points. To me, it doesn't look like this bull run should be over, so still not. And I've also brought along a few other indicators. For one, I have an interesting chart here. Here you can see, on the one hand, the regular value of Bitcoin as it's listed on the exchange, and then there's also a kind of real value. And then in this orange line, there are spikes that are meant to show that the difference between the real value of Bitcoin and its exchange value basically indicates that it's overvalued. So as if Bitcoin has a much too high price, higher than what it should normally have. And here too, if we take the bull run from 2017 as an example, we saw a strong spike then. We even went above this red area because at that point, the real price deviated extremely from what was being quoted on the exchange. We already saw this in the very first bull run as well. There were also such peaks back then. In the last bull run, this effect was not as pronounced anymore, which is somewhat normal, because as more money flows into the price, meaning the market cap gets bigger, the price movement smooths out. So these spikes, which we also see in other prices, keep getting smaller and smaller. But despite all that, we still managed to get back into this red zone again. And here you can see that we have never made it halfway up until now. So that means in relation to the fair real price, Bitcoin has never been massively overpriced. And you can also sense that in the overall sentiment, because there has never really been a true bull run mood so far. So certainly all of us who have been in the market for a longer time, or you who have just joined, but yes, you already know your way around a bit too. The real euphoria just isn't there. And that means to some extent buyers are simply missing, and that's becoming noticeable. So that would be the second indicator that actually suggests this. It probably isn't the end of the bull run yet. Marcus writes that he suspects from now on, gold will be shifted into Bitcoin. Gold is an asset you tend to hold when you want to play it safe, especially in times of crisis. And if you look at the whole market environment with the situation in Ukraine where Trump is trying to resolve the conflicts, but even so, he isn't really making any progress. Or the trade war with China, for example, that also brings uncertainty. And there are many people who move into gold, and the money that's tied up in gold is, of course, not available for other assets. And what we really need is a different kind of market cement, where you can see, okay, these trade relations, especially with China, are stable. Then, with the war, that the whole situation finally comes to an end, because that's when the big players in particular will notice, okay, the market is calming down and you can move back into riskier assets, since, of course, everyone wants to earn returns. And gold actually serves more as a means of preserving wealth, even if you are currently making returns with it. And if, of course, this money is ever released, then naturally a large chunk will flow into crypto. And that, of course, could really push the whole situation even further. Seniority writes, the bull run isn't over yet. Okay, that's already a bullish attitude. I like that. And Snoopy Doo says, altcoins are trash and only good for shorting now. Yeah, honestly, that's actually something that's really sad. And this, well, I don't know if you can call it a mistake because we still don't know what the final outcome will be. But since the 2021 bull run was especially great for altcoins and small caps, a lot of people thought, why should I go into Bitcoin and only get, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 times returns when I could just go into altcoins or small caps? Because if I pick a 100 times coin there, then I've really made it. However, the various altcoins are truly performing extremely poorly at this particular moment in time, and right now it's predominantly the more well-established and prominent coins, such as Solana or XRP, that have consistently shown good and strong performance. But especially the coins with smaller caps are still really struggling, and of course it would be nice if there was a bit more movement there. And then you might even be able to go long there again, but for that you first need signals that the market actually wants to turn around. Yes, the next significant indicator, which you probably already know, is the 2-year moving average multiplier. And here we have this prominent green line, and whenever the Bitcoin price falls significantly below this particular green line, it's a clear sign of an impending bear market where you typically have very favorable and opportune entry opportunities. And when the price moves above the red line or touches the red line like we saw in 2021, that's more of a sign that the market is really overheated and that a bear market is on the horizon. As I mentioned earlier, the market will flatten out. You can also see here that we had very strong spikes above the red area. That already became less in 2018. Here in 2021, it was the case that we only touched this line. So that means you can assume that this value will most likely not rise all the way into the red area anymore, or maybe only with a lot of luck because everything is smoothing out. But even here, I would say we never even got halfway there. So even that, if you look at it in retrospect, it would be as if we now were somewhere around here in the area where you would say, okay, bull run is over. So even the third chart doesn't feel like the end of a bull run. In the fourth chart I have here, it's basically the same. You can see that in a normal market situation, we have these blue dots, which at some point start to gain momentum and become lighter. Then it transitions over here into green dots, then yellow dots, until we finally reach the bull run top, which we've marked here in red. Even there we practically didn't see the same momentum anymore in 2021 because of the flattening, but we never actually entered any green areas. So more or less, if you compare it to the other bull runs, we're still kind of lingering in the middle or even the lower third. So this also doesn't look like the end of a bull run. Yeah, and then there's the rainbow chart. It's exactly the same thing here again. It basically shows where the bull run top should end up. And you can also see here that we're still experiencing a flattening. But even here, in the lower range, we still haven't entered it by a long shot. Not in any area where you could say, okay, Bitcoin is starting to heat up. And that's something you can also notice in the other prices. And the last one, this isn't an indicator, but it's a comparison between the M2 money supply and Bitcoin. And here's the situation we have. It's often stated and widely acknowledged that Bitcoin and the M2 money supply, which represents the total amount of currency in circulation, that is, the money available across the entire global economy, do not consistently move in perfect parallel alignment, but in the end, they basically and ultimately tend to rise and fall in conjunction with one another. And in this case, we've recently seen a dynamic increase in the money supply, while the rise in the Bitcoin price has so far been rather moderate, to put it that way. And my interpretation is as follows. Due to the current environment, as I already mentioned, war, China, and all the other problems we're facing at the moment. The Israel crisis with Hamas, for example, which currently seems to have calmed down a bit, as if the fire has been put out up there for now. I think it's simply because people aren't ready to invest in risky assets yet, since they can't quite assess the market or how things might develop, so they're securing their money in gold instead. And with gold, you can really see right now that a lot of money is flowing into the market given this amount of money. But it's not flowing into Bitcoin, it's going into gold. And that's why, as I said, I believe that if the situation changes, if the market environment shifts, a lot could flow into crypto. Then, of course, we would all benefit from that again. Marcus also writes, anyone who sells now has completely lost. That could very well be the case. So anyone who sells now and is at a loss is simply realizing that loss. If the bull run really is over, which it doesn't look like right now, but as I said, you can't rule it out, well, then selling with a small loss is still better than selling at an 80% loss. Of course, if the price turns around again, then you'll really look bad if you sold. I wouldn't do that. I definitely wouldn't do that. I wouldn't say, I'll sell now, wait it out until it drops further, and then buy back in. If that's your intention, I wouldn't do it because things can turn around again really quickly, and then you just watch the prices take off without you. And if things go badly, you might even end up buying back in at a higher price than you sold for. And that's exactly how the market makers make their money, by playing on your fears. Feel free to give the video a thumbs up and let me know in the comments how you assess the current situation. And if you're interested in watching the full live stream, here's the link for it. I'd be happy if you stop by there as well. Currently, my live streams always take place on Fridays at 7 p.m. You're warmly invited to join in too.